Part 1. It's just a joke, babe. Lighten up. The words echoed in my ears, bouncing off the manicured hedges and the perfectly arranged floral displays that adorned our outdoor ceremony. They were accompanied by a forced chuckle and a sickly sweet grin plastered across Chad's usually handsome face. But in that moment, with his eyes gleaming with a smug self-satisfaction, he looked less like the man I thought I loved and more like a privileged frat boy who just pulled off the prank of the century. Around us, chaos reigned. Our meticulously planned, ridiculously expensive wedding, the one we'd spent months agonizing over, pouring our hearts, souls, and bank accounts into, had ground to a screeching halt, a train wreck of shattered expectations and simmering resentment. Confetti, meticulously chosen to match the exact shade of the bridesmaids' dresses, lay scattered on the pristine white aisle like fallen dreams, mocking the fairy tale ending I'd envisioned. The string quartet, flown in from Vienna at exorbitant cost, sat frozen in their chairs, their bows suspended midair, their faces a mixture of confusion and thinly veiled amusement. And my own face, I could feel, burned hotter than the Arizona sun beating down on our carefully shaded oasis of wedding bliss. Chad and I, Charlie, as our friends so cringingly referred to us. We'd been together for 5 blissful years, a whirlwind romance that started with a chance encounter at a charity gala and quickly blossomed into what I believed was genuine, unwavering love. 5 years of shared laughter, spontaneous weekend getaways, and unwavering support for each other's dreams. He'd proposed on a picture-perfect beach in Maui, complete with a sunset serenade from a ridiculously talented and surprisingly expensive ukulele player, and I'd said yes without a moment's hesitation. It was the kind of moment that seemed ripped straight from a romantic movie, the kind of moment that made you believe in fairy tales and happily ever afters. We were the golden couple, the envy of all our friends. The pair who always looked effortlessly chic, the couple who seemed to have it all, the good looks, the successful careers, the ridiculously adorable dog, Bentley, who was currently dressed in a miniature tuxedo, looking equally bewildered by the unfolding drama. We were #relationship goals personified, the epitome of modern love. Or so I thought. Or so I desperately wanted to believe. But now, as I stood there at the altar, mortified and enraged, I realized that I might have been living a carefully constructed lie, a fairy tale built on a foundation of false pretenses and deeply buried insecurities. The fantasy had burst, in a shower of confetti. Part 2. The joke, as Chad so flippantly called it, had started innocently enough. He cleared his throat, tapped the microphone with a practiced ease that suggested he'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, and launched into a series of heartfelt thank yous. He thanked our parents for their unwavering support and, more importantly, for footing the bill for this extravagant affair. He thanked the wedding planner for orchestrating the impossible, and he even thanked Bentley, the dog, for being the best and most photogenic ring bearer a couple could ask for. Then, his eyes twinkling mischievously, a predatory glint that I now recognized as a sign of impending disaster, he announced that he wanted to share a few funny stories about our relationship, a lighthearted tribute to the woman he was about to marry. My heart swelled with anticipation. I imagined him recounting our first awkward date, our spontaneous road trip to Vegas, the time we rescued a baby bird from the clutches of a neighborhood cat. Sweet, sentimental memories that would bring a tear to everyone's eye. Instead, what followed was a slow, agonizing descent into humiliation. He started recounting embarrassing stories from our past, stories I'd shared with him in confidence, moments of vulnerability that I'd entrusted to him with the implicit understanding that they would remain sacred. Stories that he now twisted, contorted, and weaponized for the sake of cheap laughs. He launched into a detailed account of the time I accidentally dyed my hair green while attempting a DIY ombre tutorial I'd found on Pinterest. He exaggerated the details, adding outlandish embellishments and mocking my clumsy attempts to fix the disaster. The guests chuckled politely at first, mistaking his cruelty for playful banter. Then he moved on to our first date, gleefully recounting the time I tripped and fell headfirst into a public fountain, soaking myself from head to toe and ruining my expensive silk dress. He mimicked my flailing limbs, imitating my mortified expression, and even adding a fabricated dialogue in which I supposedly begged him not to tell anyone about the incident. As the stories became increasingly personal and mean-spirited, The laughter started to die down. A nervous cough rippled through the crowd. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. My bridesmaids, their faces frozen in polite smiles, subtly shifted their weight, trying to distance themselves from the unfolding train wreck. But Chad, fueled by the initial laughter and blinded by his own ego, pressed on, oblivious to the growing discomfort. He recounted the time I confessed my deep-seated fear of clowns, mocking my irrational phobia and insinuating that I was a childish and irrational woman. He even shared a story about a particularly embarrassing incident involving a wardrobe malfunction at a work Christmas party, an incident I had specifically asked him to keep secret. I stood there, frozen in place, my face burning with shame, my heart sinking with each passing word. This wasn't the loving, heartfelt tribute I'd expected. This was a public evisceration, a blatant display of disrespect, a cruel and calculated attempt to undermine my confidence and expose my vulnerabilities to the world. And it was all being broadcast in real time to a crowd of hundreds of people, all of whom I had carefully chosen to witness the happiest day of my life. That day was no longer happy. Part 3. The final straw came when he turned his attention to my career. My writing. The thing that defined me, the passion that fueled me, the very core of my being. It wasn't just a job. It was a calling, a way to express myself, to connect with the world, to make a difference, however small. I poured my heart and soul into my work, sacrificing time, energy, and sleep in pursuit of my dreams. And it was hard. Rejection was a constant companion, self-doubt a familiar demon. But I persevered, driven by an unwavering belief in my talent and a burning desire to tell stories that mattered. Chad, on the other hand, was a successful lawyer, a golden boy with a silver spoon. He'd coasted through law school, landed a coveted position at a prestigious firm, and was now pulling in a six-figure salary, all before the age of 30. He worked hard, I'll give him that, but he never understood the struggles, the sacrifices, the sheer vulnerability of pursuing a creative career. He started making snide remarks about my struggling artist lifestyle, mocking my low income, my erratic schedule, and my unrealistic ambitions. He insinuated that I was only marrying him for his money, that I was using him as a stepping stone to a life of financial security. "Let's be honest, folks," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, his eyes scanning the crowd for approval. "She's not exactly marrying me for my stunning good looks or my winning personality. She's marrying me for the lifestyle, the security, the unlimited supply of avocado toast." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the crowd. My parents, seated in the front row, exchanged worried glances. My best friend Sarah shot me a look of horrified sympathy. And I stood there, paralyzed with shock, my face burning with shame and humiliation. But beneath the shame, something else was brewing. A slow, simmering rage, a fierce protectiveness of my work, my dreams, my very identity. I had tolerated the embarrassing stories, the cruel jokes, the public display of disrespect. But when he attacked my career, when he belittled my passion, when he reduced me to a gold-digging stereotype, he crossed a line. He attacked the very core of who I was. That's when I snapped. The anger, the humiliation, the betrayal, it all boiled over, a volcanic eruption of pent-up frustration and righteous indignation. My carefully constructed composure shattered into a million pieces, and I felt a primal urge to lash out, to defend myself, to make him pay for what he was doing. The years of swallowed insults, the suppressed anxieties, the silent compromises, they all came flooding to the surface, demanding to be heard, demanding to be acknowledged. The polite, demure, supportive girlfriend vanished, replaced by a woman scorned, a woman wronged, a woman ready to fight for her self-respect. Part 4. The air crackled with tension. The laughter had died down completely, replaced by a stunned silence. Chad, emboldened by his previous success in manipulating the crowd, clearly didn't realize he'd gone too far. He wore a smug smirk, expecting me to brush off his words, to play along with the charade. He thought he had me trapped, pinned beneath the weight of societal expectations and the pressure of the meticulously planned wedding. He was wrong. So wrong. "Chad," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. That's enough. My words cut through the silence, a sharp, clear command that demanded attention. He blinked, momentarily taken aback by my uncharacteristic assertiveness. But then, the smirk returned, even wider, even more infuriating. "Come on, Allie baby," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "It's just a joke. Can't you take a little ribbing? Don't be such a snowflake." The word snowflake felt like a slap in the face. It was his favorite term of dismissal, his way of invalidating my feelings and belittling my concerns. It was the phrase he used whenever I dared to challenge his opinions, whenever I expressed an emotion that didn't align with his carefully curated worldview. But this time it didn't work. This time, the word only fueled my anger, solidifying my resolve. I wasn't a snowflake. I was a volcano, and I was about to erupt. "No, Ched," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "It's not a joke. It's cruel, it's disrespectful, and it's completely unacceptable. You've humiliated me in front of my friends and family, you've belittled my career, and you've shown me a side of yourself that I never knew existed. I'm done." I took a step forward, my eyes blazing with a fury that surprised even myself. He started to backpedal, his smug expression slowly morphing into a look of dawning horror. The power dynamic had shifted. The hunter had become the hunted. "You know what, Chad?" I said, my voice ringing out across the stunned crowd, clear and strong and unwavering. "I think I've made a mistake." I paused, letting my words sink in, savoring the look of growing panic on his face. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the rustling of leaves in the nearby trees and the faint chirping of crickets. The wedding, the fairy tale, the future I had envisioned, it all hung suspended in the air, teetering on the brink of collapse. Chad's smirk faltered, replaced by a look of genuine fear. He opened his mouth to say something, to apologize, to backtrack, but I cut him off, silencing him with a single piercing glance. The tables were turned, and I was finally in control. He had wanted a joke? I was about to give him the biggest joke of his life. Part 5. "I'm not marrying you," I announced, my voice clear, unwavering, and resonating with a newfound power. The words hung in the air, a stark declaration that shattered the fragile facade of our perfect wedding. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, a wave of shock and disbelief washing over the faces of our guests. My parents looked stunned. My bridesmaids stood frozen in place, and even Bentley, the dog, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, letting out a low, mournful whimper. Chad stood there, paralyzed, his face a mask of disbelief and rapidly dawning horror. He opened his mouth to say something, to plead, to apologize, to salvage the wreckage of his carefully orchestrated joke, but I cut him off, silencing him with a withering glare. "You think this is funny, Chad?" I said, my voice dripping with scorn. "You think it's okay to humiliate me in front of all my friends and family? You think it's okay to belittle my career and make me feel like I'm not good enough? You think I'm just some gold-digging snowflake who's marrying you for your money? Well, guess what? I'm not. I'm worth more than you could ever afford." I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his, my voice low and intense. "I deserve someone who respects me, who values my dreams, and who loves me for who I am, not for what I can offer him. And Chad, you are clearly not that person." I turned to the guests, my voice filled with newfound confidence and a defiant sense of liberation. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces. "There will be no wedding today, but there will be an open bar, so please enjoy yourselves. Consider it a celebration of freedom." A murmur of hesitant approval rippled through the crowd. A few guests even started to applaud, a tentative show of support for my dramatic decision. My parents, after a moment of initial shock, managed to compose themselves and offered me encouraging smiles. Sarah, my best friend, gave me a knowing wink, her eyes sparkling with pride. Then I turned back to Chad, my final words laced with triumph. "And Chad," I added, a triumphant smile gracing my lips, "you can keep the ring. I wouldn't want it. I'm sure Sierra from your gym will appreciate it." The gym was Chad's favorite place to work out lately. With a flourish, I dropped the microphone, the sound echoing loudly in the sudden silence. I turned on my heel, lifted my chin, and walked out of my own wedding, leaving Chad standing there, alone and utterly humiliated, as the bewildered guests slowly began to make their way to the open bar. The Viennese quartet even started playing again, the music a weird juxtaposition to the drama that had just unfolded. As I walked away, I could feel the weight of the years of suppressed anger and resentment lifting from my shoulders. I had finally stood up for myself. I had finally taken control of my own destiny, and I had finally freed myself from a relationship that was built on lies and disrespect. It was the most empowering moment of my life. And Chad, if you're reading this, know this, the joke's on you. I may have lost a wedding, but I gained something far more valuable, my self-respect. And that, my dear, is priceless. The sound of popping champagne corks grew louder as I walked away, and I knew I'd done the right thing. There was a whole world out there, filled with more than just wedding confetti. The best part of the evening was heading home, curling up with Bentley, and ordering all the tacos I could eat.